by far, without a doubt, the most powerful, broken, and overpowered weapon in the entirety of the game. Throughout the rendition of the gameplay, you will see me using this weapon, dealing up to 25k damage while usage of the Ash of War. This weapon was to some extent underpowered. It got buffed in the most recent patch, so the patch notes for the weapons, you will see them on the top left corner right here. But let's talk about how it was before. Why did this buff broke the weapon so much, and why is it the most overpowered weapon right now in the game? It's a weird kind of weapon. Like, it's a weapon like many of the other ones that they changed the playstyle of the player. This requires for you to be a little bit more on the aggressive side, because, well, by being aggressive, you unlock the true potential of the weapon. It has a buff mechanic that whenever you attack, the weapon is going to recover the luster, meaning that it's going to deal more damage. It has a buff that it's also tier based. There's 2 tiers of the buff. While you're attacking, the buff is going to remain active, and whenever you deal damage, it's going to increase the amount of time that the buff is going to be active. What was the issue prior to this? That the buff wouldn't last that long, and that it would require for too many hits for you to be able to complete the luster of the weapon. Now they extended the duration of the weapon being buffed, and also they decreased the amount of hits that it is required for you to luster the weapon. That being said, the different tiers that you have for the Ash of War, let's say that this is somewhat of a holy Comet Azure, but it's better because it deals more damage, it's faster, and also it has some extent of a tracking. It's not that amazing, but for example, Comet Azure would just shoot the beam straight forward, and this one, to some extent, would follow enemies. If they are moving too fast, it's difficult for the beam to catch them, but more often than not, if you time it properly, the one cool thing about this weapon is that if once you charge the weapon, it deals tremendous amounts of damage. Like the base damage of the weapon, it deals just so much damage that by the time that you have the weapon charge, it's just going to require one tap of that Ash of War to kill the enemy that you have in front of you. The only downside being is that it's a wholly based weapon, and the beam that you have right there, it's wholly based, and there's many enemies out there that are resistant to wholly. The final bosses of both the main game and the DLC, they are both resistant to wholly, but the damage is just so nuts that it doesn't matter that they are resistant, because you're still going to deal tremendous amounts of damage to them. Now, before we continue with build, a little word from today's sponsor. Lately I found myself ordering food too much. Suffice to say that it's not the healthiest diet that I've ever had, because you also want to eat good and delicious. I do have to keep up with my work and productivity, and I don't really have that much time to cook or plan a healthy diet. Well, if you have the same issue as me, then Factor 75 is your solution. It's a food delivery service that places meals that you can either microwave or heat in the oven for them to be ready to eat in 2 to 5 minutes. And because of that, you get rid not only of cooking, but groceries and cleaning time, which can also be very time consuming as well. There are chef-cooked meals that are delicious, that save you time to be more productive, or maybe even if you want to eat delicious, healthy food, but you're not too much of a cook yourself, and you wouldn't be hurting your wallet at all, since they have lots of different options with very accessible prices. You can get a 50% discount of your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders using my link that you can click in the link in the video description or in the comment section, or scan the QR code with your phone. So the stats that we have for this character, this is 150 character, and the weapon it's just tremendously powerful. Here we're trying to achieve the 80 hard cap for faith, because the skill, the Ash of War of the weapon, scales based on faith. The more faith you have, the more damage that you will be dealing, and we want to reach the maximum potential because of how much damage this one does. It has a requirement for strength and dexterity 16 and 16. Ideally, you only want to have 11 dexterity, because then you can use Millicent Prestigious, which we'll discuss on the Talisman section, that will increase your dexterity to 16. Mind, you're not going to deal that much mind. As a matter of fact, I would put more points into mine than endurance. I just got them even in here for some reason. But the thing is that with this weapon, just one usage of the Ash of War is going to be enough if you luster the weapon enough and if you didn't whiff the Ash of War, because you can get knocked out of the animation. But more often than not, as you are able to see all throughout the rendition of the gameplay, if you luster the weapon and you use it whenever you have a chance, a window of opportunity, it's going to be just one cast of the Ash of War to kill any boss that you have in front of you. So the goal with this weapon is to increase the luster of the weapon, and then once the luster is increased to the maximum tier, which is the second tier, then you cast the Ash of War, which is going to one-shot the boss that you have in front of you. So there really is no... It's very, very costly on FP. It costs like 28 consumption FP points. As for the equipment, there's just two things that you want to make sure that you have. The Euporia, which is the main weapon that we have right here. You can have a shield. I always like to use Mass Soldier shield, and we do have strength 16 strength in here to be able to use something different. The weapon doesn't weight that much, so that allows you to actually have somewhat of a medium decent shield in here in the event that you would want to use a shield. However, remember that you're going to take the most advantage out of this weapon by two-handing it, because that's the most amount of hits that you're going to deal. And then we have the finger seal to buff our character as well, but the finger seal that we're using right here is not improved because the buffs that we're using are specifically and mostly and only for percentage base. We're not going to be using spells, incantations, even though that we have the hard cap for faith, because there's virtually nothing, like quite literally nothing, not even impenetrable thorns, that are going to deal more damage than this thing on the game. And as for the armor, just remember that with the amounts of armor that you have equipped right now, it should bypass the 51 points threshold. The weapon does have, the weapon Ash of War does have some kind of hyper armor, but it's nothing too crazy. You can get staggered out of the animation, so more often than not, you do want to take advantage of the windows of opportunity and also have your basic poise threshold so that you don't get staggered all the time. By using the Oathseeker Knights, the Knights Cavalry Gauntlets, and the Graves of Solitude, that's more than enough to have 51 poise that you need. The three talismans that I consider to be a must. Millicent Prosthesis. The Millicent Prosthesis is going to increase your dexterity, meaning that you don't have to invest that much into your weapon. Sacred Scorpion Charm, because the weapon has very high sacred damage. As a matter of fact, as a basic sacred damage, it has like 450 sacred damage. That is going to be increased by 12%, but also the Ash of War that we'll be using, the one that deals like nearly 30k damage, it's increased by 12% right here. So that's much more damage translated in here. Then we're using Shadow of Alexander to increase the potency of our Ash of War by 20%, and then the final one, that would be the slot that you would be using for your support kind of thing. The Dragon Crest Talisman, Earth's Favor +2, if you want to use something heavier. But my advice and my recommendation, although this is very difficult to accomplish if you already have the Millicent Prosthesis, the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, because it is a very fast stacking weapon, and as a matter of fact, that extra damage that we're trying to stack it because we want to deal the most possible burst damage while usage of the Ash of War. But if you don't have the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, the basic one, it works just fine as well. Like always, we're just using two spells. Flame, grant me strength. Now, granted, this is not really that mandatory. As a matter of fact, if you want to just completely omit this one, you can. This is just more 20% physical damage. It's not going to increase that much our damage, because most of our damage is holy based, and most of the base damage of the weapon is also holy based, so you're not taking advantage of that 20% extra physical damage. However, Golden Bow, in most instances, the 15% more damage that you receive from Golden Bow, it affects different kind of spells, it affects different kind of Ashes of War, but more often than not, this is just an increase in general damage. So it's always a nice idea to have in here this one right here, and also it's a nice idea to have Golden Bow, because we are negating the 10% extra more damage that we receive from the Sacred Scorpion Charm because of the 10% damage negation that we receive from Golden Bow. As for the mix of wondrous physics, of course, we want to be using the Holy Shroud Cractia to increase our damage, the entirety of the damage of holy base damage by 20%. Remember that this grows exponentially if you're using the Ash of War. And then we have the Thorny Cractia, which makes the consecutive attacks grow stronger in a mixed physique. Remember that we're using a twin blade, two-handed twin blade, which increases our damage by quite a lot. The only weapons that I would consider to be some kind of decent combatants to these weapons would be the Blasphemous Blade or maybe Mogwai Spear, but Mogwai Spear usually I consider it to be a little bit better than the Blasphemous Blade because of the DPS potential, but the Blasphemous Blade has decent damage, but it also heals you. Now this one deals nearly 3 times that the Mogwai Sacred Spear does. It's not a 360 AoE, but it's still just like, I would say that there's nothing, like quite virtually nothing right now that you can have on this game without having like the infinite amounts of buffs that usually people likes to stack, that allow you to just what I'm trying to say in here, that as a basic build and as a basic weapon out of all of the roster that you have out there, there's nothing, like quite literally nothing in this game that is going to deal more damage than this thing. You can achieve nearly 30k damage in one single cast of the Ash of War. So in reality, this turns into a fight of building the luster and then finding the window of opportunity that you can cast the luster of the weapon to kill the enemy. So ideally you're going to deal 1/4 of the health damage, the base damage of the boss that you're fighting against, and then the final one, the three quarters left, you're going to slay them off with the usage of the Ash of War, which is going to melt the bosses. Anyways, if you like the content, like and super appreciate it. And also, you today, you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You're today a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, like the video, and a beautiful day. Goodbye.